It begins with a lady cutting out letters to form words. She is Jo, whose husband, Spencer, eventually comes to her. We discover she is getting ready for a baby shower since she is pregnant. Later, she hangs up the words she cut out. They are to welcome their baby into their house. We also see food there on the table. A cake has a tiny baby lying at its center, very appropriate for the situation. Soon, many of Jo's friends arrive with gifts for the baby shower. As they do, we see the couple lives in a spectacular house. One of Jo's friends gives a speech saying that she will miss her. Eventually, her friends leave. On the next day, Jo is out with Spencer shopping for baby clothes. Then a lady appears there, asking Jo when the baby is due. It should be born any day now, is the answer she gets. This lady comes with a baby too, which lies covered in a carriage. Wanting to see it, Jo puts her hand on it. But the lady somewhat rudely removes her hand, telling Jo to never wake a sleeping baby. After that interaction, we see that Jo found it strange. She even tells Spencer about it when they're at home. At night, the big moment finally arrives. Jo feels the baby coming out. The next scene has her at a hospital giving birth. In the morning, the family leaves the hospital. Jo tells Spencer that she wishes her mom was there. Once they stand near their car. While they ride back home, Jo sees many moms with baby carriages. It is like it's being shown purposefully for her. There is one frightening episode, however. One lady takes her baby to throw it at Jo's window. The horrific image of it lasts for less than a second, though it was just an unpleasant image. It was probably a manifestation of her fear of now having to deal with a newborn. At their house, we get to hear the baby cry a lot. This shows us the initial hardship of having a baby, yet Jo handles it quite well. At night, she puts Ruby, her baby, into a quiet state. The doorbell soon rings, unfortunately making Ruby cry. Jo gets angry, but when she opens the door, we see it is daytime already. People arrive to work on the house. Jo's friend, Caroline, is also there, letting us know that it's already been 1 month since Ruby was born. That is the strange time shift we have been given. Jo then walks into her house, looking at the mess that's now there because of Ruby. Later, the couple falls asleep with their baby nearby. Upon waking up, Jo witnesses their dog messing with something bloody on the floor. This causes Jo to start losing her mind, believing it to be the worst thing that could happen. After that worrisome event, the couple sits at a doctor's office, describing the incident to the man. It turned out to be a bone on the floor, because Spencer is a butcher. Ruby was asleep upstairs, says the father. With the information he has received, the doctor tells them having such fears is normal for parents. Afterward, we see a section of time that involves Jo engaging in the monotonous activities of early motherhood. Ruby is a hassle that needs constant care and attention. Jo's life is shown through a kaleidoscopic frame, indicating the absorbing nature that a baby has on its parent. While she walks near a road with Ruby in her carriage, a car drives by at a high speed. It makes the carriage fall to the side, alarming Jo. At that moment, a lady comes to comfort her. Once she does, Jo recognizes her as the lady from the baby store. She is Shelley, who seems to quickly become Jo's friend. At some other time, they go together to a gathering of ladies with babies. Jo talks about how her baby cries a lot, exhausting her. Yet they all look so relaxed, with their babies being quiet. Shelley's advice is to trust her instincts. At home, Jo looks at her stretch marks near the mirror. A supernatural element presents itself when we observe that her reflection remains motionless. Then we see the couple with Spencer's mother, Doris. They leave the baby with her as they ride off. However, Jo doesn't seem completely at peace with this because she looks back several times. In the next scene, we get to see the new parents enjoy some quality time together by being without Ruby at a restaurant. Though Spencer notices that something is not right with his wife. She tells him she feels like she's disappearing. But Spencer assures her that all will return to normal soon. Once he goes to the washroom, Jo looks at her baby monitor. For a brief moment, she sees herself standing near Ruby's crib. Shortly after, the baby vanishes and the signal gets lost. This prompts Jo to start calling Doris. Since the phone isn't getting picked up, Jo becomes loudly angry. She makes somewhat of a scene by wanting to leave to check on Ruby. Unfortunately, the couple's quality time being alone together did not go smoothly. Following that, they sit at home, with Spencer saying they will get better at this. Jo tells him she heard whispering on the baby monitor. Spencer thinks it was just his mom whispering to Ruby. Jo goes to check on her, telling the baby she won't ever leave her again. As she starts, her daughter bites her, to the point of blood coming out. This later leads her to check the internet for baby biting. Afterward, we see the group of mothers running outside with carriages. At first, Jo is considerably ahead of them, but they soon all pass her. Shelley comes to her and Jo asks if Shelley feels her baby is angry with her. She also asks if her baby punishes her. This confuses her friend. She probably thinks babies can't punish anyone. They don't have the mentality for it. Jo then leaves, seemingly canceling her time outside. At home, she cleans angrily while Ruby cries. Caroline is there to inform Jo that her baby has been crying for over an hour. So Jo comes to Ruby to say that she's not going to let her win. She screams it several times. We come to realize now what kind of a toll this has taken on the new mother. Not only is there constant pampering, but Jo was also harshly bitten by her daughter. This baby is changing her life for the worse. She even tells Spencer that Ruby is destroying her. Taking the role of a good husband, he wants to help. Shortly after, we see Jo changing her look. She looks more sensual now, and meets Shelley at a bar along with the other mothers. She dances with them, losing herself to the vibrant energies of the night. It even allows her to get intimate with Shelley. While they're in the car together, Shelley notices the bite mark that Ruby gave to Joe. After that, Joe wakes up alone in her car. She gets a message from Shelley asking Joe where she was. They were supposed to have a night out together. This shows us that Joe either imagined or dreamed all of it. She comes home to tell Spencer she fell asleep in the car, where she surprisingly slept very well. Spencer says he also had a nice night with their daughter. Soon they get into an argument about how things are going, causing Ruby to wake up. When Joe comes to kiss her, Ruby bites her ear. At the doctor's office again, Joe asks the doctor if Ruby is disappointed or angry. This confuses him, because babies are not old enough for such emotions. He says he's going to give Ruby some shots. As Joe waits for him to return, she starts reading a book on babies. Suddenly, she gets struck by anxiety, which makes her leave. She comes to Spencer at his workplace, telling him that Ruby is not trying to hurt her, she is trying to tell her something. This is information she got from the book. Joe even says that Ruby might be trying to warn them. At this point, Spencer tells her she needs to rest. At home, Joe keeps reading that book. It didn't look like she stole it, so she must have bought a copy. Doris is there with her. She talks about her hardships with Spencer when he was a baby. She reveals something quite unsettling, that she loved him but also hated him. It scared her to imagine all the terrible things that could happen to baby Spencer. Eventually, however, she realized that she wished for them. She prayed to God one time for someone to take her baby away from her. One day she even took a knife, almost using it on her son. This dark revelation makes Joe uncomfortable. She wants Doris to stop. Doris's final point is that they're not allowed to talk about such things. Because of this, their fear or hatred only grows stronger. We learn from her experience what kind of mental places some people could travel into due to having a baby constantly weighing on them. Being a new mother is a rough road to walk on. On that night, Joe wakes up to see Doris and Ruby. Though she finds it somewhat disturbing, she doesn't intervene. On the next day, Caroline wants to show Joe something the workers are doing. Upon coming near the roof, the worker drops something near her by accident. This seems to push her over the edge. Joe comes back to take Ruby and walks away with her. She comes to Shelley's house. Inside, Shelley sees that Joe is nervous. It makes her ask if Spencer found out about them. Joe is confused until Shelley tells her about their night out together. It wasn't imagined, it was real. Both of them were intimate together. Shelley becomes angry because Joe didn't return Shelley's calls after such a special event. Joe assures her she will talk about it, but now she has to call Spencer. While she's alone, Joe leaves him a message saying she is in danger along with Ruby. She wants him to send everyone away. As she talks, she notices an opening at the doorway to Shelley's baby's room. Oddly to Joe, the baby is not in the crib, so she walks into the room to observe the emptiness of it. She remembers never seeing Shelley's baby. This makes her realize there never was one. Going into the adjacent room, Joe sees lots of bloody materials that scare her. Once she exits, Shelley stands in the crib room, comforting Ruby. Joe has had enough. She wants answers. She asks Shelley why she came up to her in the baby store. Instead of letting her answer, Joe answers for her. She says she was a good target for Shelley. She knew that motherhood would be difficult for her. Now Joe wants Ruby back. Yet Shelley gives her a corrupt smile and says that Ruby is ruining her life. Since she makes it hard for Joe to take her, Ruby bites Shelley's neck. At that moment, Joe takes her daughter away before escaping. She comes home to Spencer, who is worried. She instantly tells him that they want Ruby. He asks who wants her. Without answering, Joe sees he's still wearing his apron. Spencer tells her he will go upstairs. Then he will come back to speak to her. When he goes up, Joe is surprised to see Doris there. The grandmother takes her grandchild off Joe's hands to go outside with her. During dinner, the three of them have a casual conversation. However, it soon turns into Spencer with Doris talking about getting help for Joe. They tell her that people are coming for her as they speak. This creates an atmosphere of tension. Everyone seems to be against the troubled mother. Can she not live in peace anymore? Wanting to say goodbye to Ruby, Joe comes to hold her. As she does, she quickly grabs a knife to threaten Spencer with. She says she knows the truth. How could Spencer do this to them? She asks him. After saying she hates him, she also says she will never let her daughter go. Again, she runs away with her. Following that, Joe locks herself in their car. It doesn't take long for her husband to slam his hands on the window, urging her to come out. But she ignores him while driving away with Ruby. As she drives, she acts slightly crazy. She also sees someone ahead on the road, causing her to swerve into an accident. Perhaps the person was imagined, though we don't know. The next scene has Joe awakening in a hospital. The moment she does, she asks for Ruby. Spencer is there to tell her she is okay. As time passes, we see Joe getting better at the hospital, both physically and mentally. After an unknown amount of days, Joe rides back home with Doris. Upon arriving, she wants to look at Ruby, but something prevents her. She can't bring herself to do it after everything that happened. Joe places a dream catcher near her window at night. Again, we see her reflection stay in the window once she leaves. Later, Spencer tells her that Ruby loves her. During her accident, the car was crushed, he says. Somehow she managed to crawl out. When she was found, Joe was covering Ruby. All that Joe says is that she's scared. Sometime at night, Ruby starts crying, prompting Joe to come to her. She takes her daughter downstairs, where she starts preparing her milk. Yet the crying is getting to her. After Joe throws the bottle on the floor out of anger, she notices Ruby has disappeared. Someone is running outside, which makes Joe chase them. She ends up in the woods, screaming for Ruby. Then she finds the person sitting with Ruby. It turns out to be another her, perhaps the one we've seen in the reflections. The Joe that arrived tells the other one she is a terrible mother. Ruby doesn't want her. But is this true? Which one of them is the one who becomes enraged? It could be the one that's standing. The other Joe says she's not afraid of her. She tells the standing Joe to come closer. Once she does, she receives Ruby from her doppelganger. The original Joe now holds her daughter to show her nothing except love. The other Joe is no longer there. Her mind split in two to show the desire to escape the responsibility of being a parent, especially an early one. Now Joe stands in the woods with Ruby, having become stronger by confronting her fear of running away. This story has shown us that becoming a parent can transform our lives. Hopefully, this transformation will be mostly positive.